And I figured we'd start today by talking about you slipping on ice and how that led to your interaction with Ram Dass. And I would love for the listeners to hear this story.
Well, I'm just now putting my hand on the back of my head where the little knot still is where I fell down. Yes, well, you have to picture this. Right now, I'm in a sunny little town in California, but 50 years ago, right about now 50 years ago, heading into winter, I was living in a little town in New Hampshire where I was teaching at a school for delinquent boys, about 100 boys. And I was in charge of one of the dormitories, and everything was wrong in my life. I was 100 pounds overweight, more than 100 pounds more. Right now I weigh about 180 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall. But then 50 years ago, I was 6 feet tall, but I weighed 320 pounds. And so I was grossly obese and I was a heavy smoker. And I was in a terrible relationship that I was trying to figure out how to get out of. My job sucked, and there were just a few little bright spots in my life. So I was ripe for a big wake up from the universe. So I always tell my students now that the universe is happy to teach us by tickling us with a feather if we're paying attention. But if we're not paying attention, it is also just as happy to hit us over the head with a sledgehammer. It's all to do with the openness to learning. And so I was very close to learning at the time. So I went for a walk, winter day in New Hampshire, and it had recently snowed, and there was a place on the ice where there was some ice underneath a patch of snow. And I stepped on the snow and hit the ice, and my feet shot out from under me, and I went whoop, all 320 pounds of me down on my back. 320 pounds is probably about what a refrigerator weighs, so it's, a pretty big whoomp. And so I didn't knock myself out, but I knocked myself out of myself in a way, because there was about 2 minutes where I was in this very expanded state of consciousness, where it was as if I could see down through all the levels of myself that I'd never seen before. Like I saw this emotional level in myself that was things I was angry about, things I was sad about, things I was scared about, but I'd never paid attention to them before. And some of them went back to, to when I was a little kid. And I realized I had repressed and suppressed all of my emotions underneath this 140 pounds of extra fat. And I knew just how I did it too, when I realized when I would get lonely or upset about something, I would go to the refrigerator and I would just eat until I wasn't lonely or upset anymore. The only trouble is I was then bloated and miserable instead of feeling angry or sad. So I developed this tremendous eating disorder in my life. So I realized that it was all based on these emotions, and I needed to feel those emotions directly instead of eating every time they came up. So this was one of the levels I saw down in myself, but where I came to was I saw that there was this deep, deep, deep level, the deepest level of ourselves, that was just pure consciousness. It didn't have any of our programming on it. And that was the big realization, that here was this huge field of pure consciousness that was there before all of my programming. And so once I realized that, I realized, oh, that gives us a place to change our life from. Otherwise, you're just kind of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic because you're not at the deep enough level to make a difference. And so I felt that pure consciousness, this big, delicious field, kind of like a inner ocean of pure consciousness. And I feel it this moment, too. It's now, 50 years later, I feel it all the time in me. But then it was just like catching a flash of it. And so as I was lying there, then I felt my old personality begin to come back. I realized, I'm shivering cold and I want a cigarette and I'm a mile from home and my back hurts and I'm laying on a frozen road. And so it's like I felt my old personality coming back together. But here's the cool thing. before I reassembled my personality fully, something in me told me to make a commitment. And I don't know where this part came from, but I just said, make a commitment. And I made a commitment to feeling that pure consciousness in every moment of my life. I said, I want to feel that way all the time. That was the way I put it. I'm going to feel that way all the time. That's what I commit to. I'm going to do whatever it takes to feel that all the time. That was the big commitment that came out of that moment. So I went back home, and I still live in the same little apartment with 24 delinquent boys down at the other end of the hall. And everything was the same, but everything was different because I had that space of pure consciousness. Now, here's the magic that happened, Danny. When I came back, a friend of mine called me, Neil Marinello, who's still alive and well and living in Vermont. Now, Dr. Neil Marinello, God bless him. He called me and said that he was going up the road about 30 miles to Webster Lake, New Hampshire, to visit one of his old Harvard professors, Dr. Richard Alpert. And he had gone to India, Neil said, and he'd come back and had a big enlightenment experience, and he'd even changed his name to Ram Dass. And did I want to go up to the road and see him? And see, I wasn't into yoga or meditation or anything. I was an English major in college. I wanted to write the great American novel. That was what my business was. And suddenly, I get face to face with Ram Dass, who is just back from India, and he had his flowing robes on and all these beautiful young disciples around him. I remember one of them kind of floated up to me, this young girl, and offered me a bowl of fruit to eat from. And I thought it was the strangest darn thing I'd ever seen in my life. And so, but I stayed and listened to his whole 3-hour lecture, and it just blew me away because this guy talked for 3 hours without any notes. And so afterwards, I went up to him and I said, I don't know you. I probably never see you again. I ended up seeing him many times again later over the next many years. But I said, I may not see you again. So could you just take a look at me and give me a suggestion about something I might do? And he said, kind of scanned me, and he said, in India, when people have some problem they want to crack through, they don't go to therapy necessarily. They go do some yoga or they go do breathing exercises. And that caught my attention. Breathing exercises. What would that have to do with anything? Well, I said, where would I learn about something like that? And this is the cool thing, Danny. He said, don't worry, something will come to you. So the next day I'm at the supermarket checking out, and I look to my left, and there's a little book called Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation by Jess Stern, 95 cents, little paperback. And I opened it up and leafed through it, and it was entirely a book full of breathing exercises, yoga exercises, meditation, a whole chapter on how to meditate. I mean, all that for 95 cents. And I took it home and just started doing it. And that was my whole beginning. Within a year, I'd lost more than 100 pounds, gave up the cigarettes, gave up the relationship, the whole business. And wow, I wouldn't be here without that. So if you ever have a chance to fall on your back in New Hampshire, take advantage of the opportunity.